BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event. BYU's transfer portal class has now reached 19 players. 19! That's more than a few signing classes that BYU has had in the recent past. Pretty wild. BYU football with the announcement of the signings of UConn wide receiver Keelan Marion and Weber State cornerback Camden Garrett over the weekend have pushed that number up near 20. Jarom, how do these two specifically fit in their respective position groups of wide receiver and the defensive back room? Let's start with Keelan, 6 foot 197 from UConn. He was the leading receiver for the Huskies in 2021. Had 32 catches for 563 in his career there. 17.6 yards per catch in his career. So he is a Gunnar Romney type in that he is able to get down the field and make a big play. Didn't we hear Blaine Fowler say BYU needs somebody that can take the top off of a defense? There you go. That can really remove the lid, that will force them to be aware of his deep potential. That's the guy. 6 touchdowns. He had a 100-yard game with the touchdown at Vandy in 21. In 2022, in Logan, actually broke his collarbone in game 1 where UConn beat the Aggies. Missed a lot of time, so didn't have the numbers last year. But he joins Darius Lassiter out of the portal. He joins the big three there with Keanu Hill, Cody Epps, Chase Roberts. I like him as kind of potentially that 5th guy. He's got some experience in FBS, of course. You have Parker Kingston, JoJo Phillips, Koa Eldridge, some of these freshmen that will play in. But you kind of have your core 5. I asked for a couple of receivers. BYU's gotten them. So I like Keelan Marion, 2 years of eligibility specifically. Love that. Love it. Waiting to hear on Darius Lassiter if he will get his 2nd year of eligibility as well. He played 1 play in a season of JUCO football. 1 play. And JUCO's a little bit different. So there are some dynamics that they have to work through, some red tape. But hopefully Darius Lassiter will have 2 years as well. Keelan Marion, to me, is a guy who has NFL skills. He is an NFL-type receiver. Nice. And if you have a problem with what I'm saying here, take it up with the multiple BYU coaches that I had a conversation with about that very fact just a few days ago. He's a big-time player. And I'm glad you brought up his ability to stretch the defense, because that's something that BYU is missing. I like Keanu Hill and Chase Roberts, but they're not quite to the level of Keelan Marion and haven't proven it to that level in terms of just the deep threat. Nice. So I love what Keelan Marion will bring. We talked about Darius Lassiter's physicality, his ability to use his body to create space against defenders. He's got a good catch rate. He's got strong hands. And then they join an already really strong trio. Jarom, I'm feeling really good about BYU's wide receivers now with the addition of these 2 specific transfers. Yeah, and Keanu's numbers are career. Everybody else's last season, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I believe so. That's right. I think Cody had more yards last season. Keanu, yeah, and I like Keanu. Keanu's the wily veteran, right? He's the old-timer in that wide receiver. And he's the Big 12 guy. Like, he's from Texas. Yes, he's got Big 12 ties. He's like, let me tell you about these places we're going to and what it's going to be like. BYU has enough guys now. Yes. And they have the diversity of skill. I'm confident in this group. And listen, BYU may not be done. Like, you have to enter the portal, but you don't have to exit it by any time. BYU could sign guys in July that show up in August for fall camp. It could be 21 or 22 players by the time this thing is done this offseason. It all depends on just how many of the 85 have you used and who are you sort of cutting, right? Again, you can cut. This isn't high school, but kind of. Like, you can cut a guy and say, well, we don't have a spot for you. So you can enter the portal and seek it elsewhere. A lot of those conversations have already happened with guys that BYU's like, well, you're not quite up to the level that we need. Okay, let's talk about Camden Garrett now. 5'11", 175 cornerback from Weber State, another Jay Hill guy. So Eddie Hecker, Jake Eichhorn, and now Camden Garrett following Jay Hill. Familiarity. Yep, from Vegas. I wonder if he knows Eddie Hecker, a couple Vegas guys, maybe a year difference, I think, in eligibility or years there. Camden's got 1 year to play. He's played a lot, 37 games played. Big Sky honorable mention, 75 tackles in his career, 14 PBUs. Joins Eddie Heckard and Jacob Robinson and Caleb Christensen and Jalen Dunlap, a JC guy. Casey Lundquist, looking up on Pro Football Focus, some good numbers. He was targeted 47 times in 2022. Catch rate was 47%. Longest completion allowed was 22 yards. And then it brings us to our stat of the day.
It's the BYU Sports Nation stat of the day.
Last season, Camden Garrett did not allow a single touchdown or catch of 30-plus against him. In fact, it's been 2 seasons with 30-plus. Okay. So
He's a guy that can play a bunch. I think he immediately injects into the top 4 among the corners and will play quite a bit this year at a position where BYU did lose some pieces last year.
Yeah, and to clarify, we just saw George Udo on the screen. George has transferred to Charlotte. Yeah, so George Udo is not part of the cornerbacks room anymore, which left a vacancy for guys like Eddie Heckard to come in and Camden Garrett. And I'm glad you brought up the ties there because I'm assuming that Eddie and Camden do know each other. I mean, to a degree.
Vegas, and obviously Weber State.
For sure.
They played the same position.
Which reminds me that Aiden Robbins is the one who had the initial connection with Keelan Marion. So there's, on the offensive side, there's a connection right there as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, so love to see those connections. Love these guys are going to have immediate, like, a group or at least 1 or 2 guys that they know, they know there, and it will help them integrate more quickly.
And culturally at BYU, I think the Cougs do a great job of, like, no matter where you're from, you come in and you're part of this.
Yeah.
Like, and it's bigger than football. So you have a lot going on, obviously academically, but, like, obviously there's, like, representing the church angle, whether you're a member or not. Like, but there's sort of this, like, family element to Kalani that's awesome. Obviously, people get cut and feelings get hurt and people transfer. But I think culturally, BYU does a good job of, like, hey, you come into this, you're one of us now.
Yes.
And the fans you do a great job of getting that person feeling very welcomed in Cougar Nation.
I love that Eddie Heckard and Camden Garrett both have the tie to Jay Hill, too, because they know what type of an aggressive defense he wants to run. He ran the defense at Weber State. They know
They'll
exactly.
explain to the other corners. Here's what he wants. Here's what we're looking for.
Yeah, they know. So it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because they're the new guys, but they're the ones that have played defense most recently for Jay Hill.
We could see 2 Weber State corners starting for BYU in the Big 12. And Eddie Heckard, and now Camden Garrett.
If you've earned it, you've earned it.
Okay, topic 2. Saturday's baseball game against Pepperdine was the final game for BYU in any sport as a member of the West Coast Conference. Was the Cougars' time, 12 years, in the West Coast Conference a success to you?
Jarom, not just a success, a smashing success overall. In fact, there's only one sport I think BYU fans will point to and say, it just left something to be desired. Men's basketball.
Yeah.
Because they never won a conference championship.
No title, regular or tournament.
Exactly, in any shape or form.
Had it in 2021. Had it. Was up 12 with like 5 minutes to go.
I know. I know. The Trevin Nell game.
Yeah, 5 threes.
And no fans in the Orleans Arena.
You were there.
That's the only sport I can think of where a BYU fan could say, it just wasn't great. It wasn't good enough. But then again, BYU was playing with a Gonzaga power that was at the peak of their respective powers when they had 3 times the #1 team in America in 3 different seasons. It's crazy, right? Outside of that, though, think about what BYU accomplished. Women's soccer went to the national championship.
Became the best team, like literally shoved Portland out of the way.
Women's volleyball went to the Final Four twice and a national championship in 2014.
14 and 18.
Think about what cross country did with their individual and team national championships.
Yeah, putting Portland down, who was really good in the league. They were the alpha. Yeah.
BYU baseball had a restoration under Mike Littlewood.
Yep.
They won the league. They got back to the NCAA tournament.
They got a regular season title. They got a tournament title.
Yes, they were. I mean, that program was not in good shape when Mike Littlewood took over, and he took them back to prominence.
Yep.
So,
and now they've got some work to do.
You think softball did their thing? Yeah, they won. Until this year, they had won 13 straight conference championships. That streak ends this year.
Yep.
They finished in second, so and a game out, so it wasn't like they were blown out of the water, but softball has continued to do their thing. This was an overwhelming success from top to bottom, outside of maybe men's basketball.
Women's hoops won multiple tournament titles in regular seasons. Men and women's golf won championships in the league and went to NCAA regionals and championships. You covered the rest. Notably, swim and dive, gymnastics, men's volleyball, outdoor track were never in the WCC.
Yeah,
they were in either the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation, the Mountain Rim Gymnastics Conference, or independent, which is what outdoor track is. Indoor is in the MPSF. We don't have to worry about all that in the future. All you need to know is men's volleyball is the only one that's not in the Big 12, right? And there are certain sports in the Big 12 that BYU does not have. For example, I think, rowing, like rifle, and equestrian, which is the most Big 12 sport ever. Somehow Texas does not have it, by the way. I learned that over the weekend. Smashing success. Obviously, BYU needed a place initially to go. And the West Coast Conference was perfect.
Great fit.
We interacted with them closely with the basketball tournament specifically. for all those years doing the conference tournament. They were nothing but awesome.
Culturally, it was incredible.
Yeah, private Christian institutions, no San Diego State show situations. But, Gonzaga had dressed up like missionaries, whatever. I'm not personally offended by that.
I'm pretty sure BYU won that game, though.
Well, they probably dress like that every day, but that's okay. Yeah, it was great. And, we really appreciate what the West Coast Conference did for BYU. And obviously BYU did stuff for the league, helped amplify the league's profile. I think the thing that BYU did the most in the WCC, though, was rush Gonzaga into success. Jimmer Fredette and that 2011 team scared the crap out of Mark Few and Gonzaga to the point where they're like, oh, are we going to get blasted by these guys? To Gonzaga's credit, I'm saying give BYU a little credit, but to mostly Gonzaga's credit, they responded in a way where they used to be sort of the darling, they were more Davidson than they were anything else. Oh, they're that random team, the VCU type thing. No, they became a power, that can hang with the Kansas and Dukes of the world suddenly. And I think that was in response to seeing BYU enter the league and getting destroyed in Denver. To Gonzaga's credit, they took over and dominated, and BYU never really had that 1 year where they got a title. Certainly BYU won in Spokane, that was a big deal, but BYU never won the title, which was frankly disappointing.
That hurts.
For men's hoops.
That
I wanted
hurts.
at least one in 12 years.
And let's clarify something. Even though BYU didn't win a championship, it's not like BYU basketball didn't have great success at times in the West Coast Conference.
We're just talking about being the best team in men's hoops at least 1 year.
All these other teams we've referenced won championships.
Yes, but Gonzaga was the best team in its sport, in any sport, in the WCC. They were so good.
BYU still went to 4 NCAA tournaments in their 12 years, and it would have been 5 had 2020 counted.
Yeah.
So let's just go ahead and count it. It's 5 in 12 years, so it's almost every other year.
And BYU sort of took a dip. Mountain West, it was 8 out of 9 years.
Nice run with Dave Rose.
For a run in the Mountain West. So to not do that in the WCC was
that hurts. Yeah.
But I would take 5 out of 12 years now. The next 12 years in the Big 12, I would take 5. I would take 5 right now.
Our question of the day: was BYU's time as an entire athletic program in the West Coast Conference a success? At TX Colonel on Twitter answers 100% a success. Kept the BYU brand growing. Massive visibility to fans, a great point. Reality check with how we thought BYU would match up with West Coast Conference teams, notably Gonzaga. Would not be in the Big 12 now had BYU stayed in the Mountain West Conference.
Ooh, I don't agree with that one.
Well, they had to go independent in football, which launched BYU into the West Coast Conference. I think that's what he's saying is you had to lead the Mountain West in football, which spurred all of this. The rest of the sports go to the WCC.
I think if BYU still in the Mountain West, it could have been invited to the Big 12, like the other 3 from the AAC were. I disagree on that particular one.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. Had BYU not gone independent, would they have been invited?
And what's the reality check relative to the Big 12 in all the sports? We've certainly addressed men's basketball being a reality check, perhaps. Let's go.
All right.